010 podcast, where we strive to bring you authentic conversation. We are Andy and Josie. I'm sitting here with Josie, Dr. Josie. Today we're going to talk about, essentially stress, right? And we're going to talk about maybe how to recognize patterns of stress in your life and ways in which your body's trying to tell you something.
Love that.
All the time, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And how to listen to your body, how to recognize and realize some of the things, and then maybe some tools on how to snap yourself out of it, because that's one of the things that we've promised you all is with the 010 podcast is, giving you some tools that we've found along the way to help us. So yeah. So
stress, it's a big conversation. It's all over social media right now,
right?
Which is really funny to me. As a chiropractor, we've talked about stress. I learned about stress through school, and we learned it so differently than the public. I didn't know, I didn't get it. And then once I started understanding what they were talking about with stress, I was like, oh geez, this is really big and really deep. And it's not that it's complex, but it is really deep. And how it shows up in the body is obviously where the chiropractic piece comes up, because people come to see us because they don't feel good and they want to feel better.
Right.
And then our job is to help them figure out how to feel better. And it looks different than just an adjustment sometimes.
Of course.
So, and I got really curious on that. So this is kind of my baby. I love talking about stress, but
it always cracks me up when people say, when people go, I got an adjustment and I didn't even do anything. I'm like, well, come on.
Yeah, right.
Come on.
There are some of those that are so miraculous and beautiful, and it's yes, thank the Lord. That doesn't, and when they tell me that, I'm like,
I've felt them.
Yeah, and I'm like, right. Oh, that's amazing. That honestly doesn't always happen.
No.
And very rarely. So you should be very thankful for that one.
Right.
Because it's not the case, but
right.
Yeah. When I so I'll just pretend if you were to come in the office and you say,
which I do every 3 weeks.
Right. But if you were to come in and you say, something doesn't feel right, I'm just kind of off. And we go through talking about what's going on. The first thing I ask is what part of your body perceives stress? What part of your body is what is going to recognize that something is stressful?
Do people give you a blank stare?
Usually.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think it is?
Well, because I think here's the thing that is so interesting to me is, and because it's me too. We have our own experiences to draw upon, right? But until you learn how to listen to your body, which is really hard to do sometimes. When life is throwing curveballs at you all day long. But I remember when people would ask me those questions, 20 years ago, I'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Right. And a lot of people will say, there's two things that they'll say, typically. One is their heart. Then it's their heart that recognizes it. And I'm like, okay, but what tells your heart what to do? And then we get to the brain. Right. So the brain is the leader of the whole thing. Right. So when we start looking at, why are your muscles tight? Because your brain's telling them to. Is that a bad thing? Probably not. There's a reason why you need to be tight. It's because you're needing to run away from a tiger right now. That's what your brain is seeing. Right. So what is your brain perceiving to be in a certain way, stress or relax or whatever? Is it threatening? Is it go hide? Is it make babies? Is it whatever? What's going on?
I hope not.
What is your brain saying? What is your brain perceiving that could be happening right now?
Right.
And then it's oh geez, then it opens up a whole can of worms of what are all the things. But I think it's really important to understand that if we are stressed or we're feeling stressed, there's four different ways to have stress in the body. It's chemical, so what we put in and on our body. It's emotional, so what we're feeling all day. And it's physical, what are we doing all day? The fourth one that's only been in the last however many years is technology. So those four things are causing stress in our body. But the funny thing is your body responds to stress the same way no matter which kind it is. So it's easy to think it's my job, it's how I work, it's how I lift things, it's whatever. But usually that's the straw that's breaking the camel's back, and you can relate it back to that. So then that's the problem. But really, there was a problem, usually deeper and before.
Right.
Yeah. So we want to help people recognize where those things are before the back is broken, right?
Right.
I think
That's hard.
That's hard. That's really hard. And a lot of it's out of our control. Some of it is, right?
Some of it is, yeah.
But our perception is in our control.
Right.
And I think that's the key, is as long as we can help our brain see that it is safe or it is time to run. Like, we want our brain to tell us, to notice that if something is a threat, that we need to do something about it. But we need to come out of that too and be able to relax and heal afterwards. And that's what we're not doing, especially in America. I haven't traveled the world enough to know what's going on in other countries, but I know here that's a big problem we have.
Right.
And there's my soapbox. But
Well, okay, so it's funny because who said that to me? Oh, I have not asked permission to use her name here, but Katie Cost, who, do you know Katie? She's Proximal 50.
That. Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
yep. So we were talking about this, and I don't remember the exact context of the conversation, but she said, we were talking about running marathons, right?
Yes.
And the stress that put on a body, right? She said, well, yeah, like I had talked about how, do you remember a couple of summers ago when I was, I had a personal trainer?
You did, yes, yes.
And my body was a hot mess.
It was, really.
And I loved it. I'll tell you, I loved what her and I were doing. But it was, some serious cardio, some serious weights. And, fluctuating back and forth between the two things. And my body was a hot mess. And every time I come in to be adjusted, and finally Josie was like, you need to stop that. You can go for a walk and you can do light weights. And of course you're hearing different things. Women over 40, women over 50, that I'm over 50. You're supposed to use heavy weights is what they tell you, right? And my body did not want it. And Katie Costa and I were talking about that. And she said, well, right. If you could do that, you could do a workout like that, but then you need to recover. And the problem is, and same with like running a marathon or whatever it is that you choose to do that's difficult physically, you can do those things at any age, but then then your body needs to rest and relax afterwards, and that's not the world we live in. So right, you can run from the tiger, but then you have to come down from it, right?
Yes.
And we don't ever come down. Because then you have to go to work, and then you have to clean your house, and then you have to, go to whatever commitment that you made to, so you don't take the time to come down from that. So you're constantly at this flight mode instead of, a fight mode.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I never realized that was putting stressors on my body. I thought I was handling it all just fine, but my body internally was not handling it. Right.
And it's hard, like you said, the contradiction, like, of what we understand is going on, lift weights and work out, and I'm at 5 a.m. and I'm doing my workout, and then I'm getting my kids ready, and then packing lunches and getting them to the sporting events, and then I go to work and I deal with all that stuff. And it's like there's a time and a place for that. Like, I'm not putting any of that down.
No.
Those are huge things and amazing things, but like even me, like I think I told you not very long ago, I want to start running again, and I want to do this half, but I can't right now until I can let some things go that are higher stress, so that my body can recover in between runs, and not don't just add it in because it's what everyone's doing. You gotta listen to your body a bit and understand where you are at in that journey, in that healing, or not even just healing, but like where your life is really truly at. We have this perception sometimes that we're doing really good, right? Like, financially we're doing good. I'm feeling pretty healthy. or I look a certain way, I'm going to say, versus feeling healthy. My husband and I are doing really well, and all, like we have all these things that seem to, like, you think that they're going really well, but you're actually just it's like you haven't hit the threshold yet, but as soon as you add one more thing to it, you spike and things go crazy, right? And I would like people to understand where that spike is, because I think it's very important to have stress in your life. If we don't have stress, we don't grow. Just like lifting weights, if you don't stress the muscle, your muscle's not going to grow, right? If you don't put pressure on your bones and your joints, they weaken.
Right.
Okay, so you need stress in order to stay alive, to reproduce, to do whatever. But there's a time and a place for it, and there's too much, and then there's not enough. So if you can start to really be in tune with your body and understand where you truly are at versus where you are perceiving yourself to be at, then you can start to really, what am I trying to say? Escalate, elevate, whatever. Like if you can really figure that out, I think you can push your body to a whole new level, but you have to increase your threshold versus increase your stress. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. And so if we can increase your threshold to handle stress, you can see a lot more growth. But
well, how do you increase your threshold to handle? I mean, give an example.
So best ways, in my opinion, that cost nothing, we'll go with that, is you're sleeping. But when you're stressed, you can't sleep.
It's tough.
Right? Or going to the bathroom every day.
Right.
Like, is my body functioning on just the very regular things? Can it function well? So
how many times are you supposed to go to the bathroom every day?
I don't know.
Number two,
we're talking. Yeah.
I don't know if I know the real 2 to 3 times.
I was going to, after every meal, practically, is when, not that you're digesting the food that you just ate that quick. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But a good flow is that, and I don't.
Right. No.
That's been a struggle with me for most of my life, is constipation or abdominal issues, pain, digestion, whatever, flow. Yeah. But I also know that if I'm not doing that, then don't add something stressful to your life at this point, because we got to get just the functioning body back. Yeah. I think it's the Iron Cowboy, and he ran these triathlons, or not ran, there's more to it. But anyway, he had like these blisters and like these big things, like every day he did a triathlon for I don't know how many days. It was stupid. It was a crazy amount. But this is all he did. He ran it, but then his restoration periods were so important. He had a whole team together to help him. But he could get like some of those blisters to heal within a day or two because he had the restoration. So he's stressed his body to the max, and then he had that period of restoration before he had to do another one the next day. Like, it was that was almost more critical, that team that he had to help him restore, than the race itself, so that he could do the next one. And that's very extreme. Our day-to-day might look a little bit different. Mine does. Looks quite a bit different than that. But being able to really be truthful on where you're really at in life versus like where you think you should be and what you can handle. It's okay if you can handle less, if you can't handle that much, It's like we put ourselves like to a really, really high standard on what we can handle, or a low one. Exactly.
I struggle with the low standards too.
You're right.
But yeah, I just was having a conversation with an employee the other day, and she was talking about just powering through, and I'm like, yeah, I'm a big one too. My whole life I've been like, you just power through it. It's no big deal. But what I've also realized is that's not, again, there's got to be a balance. You can't always power through, but you can't have low thresholds either. Or, you have to find that healthy balance.
Yeah. So let's say you do like all the restoration and all the, like that, like you sleep a lot, but you can be on the other side of it.
Absolutely.
You can be on the more, it's either fight or flight or rest and digest. And just to simplify it, those are the two ways of what your brain says, okay, it's time to make some changes, or I need to keep your body in balance. That's what your brain's in charge of, is keeping your body in balance. So if you're in fight or flight, then we need to bring you back down. If you're in rest and digest, we need to bring you back up, to keep this homeostasis and balance in there. And there are people that are struggling with on the other side of it, where they're so like rest and digest all the time, and then nothing happens either.
It's kind of like what we just talked about. Don't you kind of stop digesting if you're always resting?
Yeah.
I don't know how you even,
either way, you're
Yeah.
going to find things that show up in your body that aren't
Right.
quite right. And you might not realize that you're emotionally stressed, because that's what people think is it's an emotional thing. It's like, it's not only emotional.
Right.
There's other ways, and there's a lot of emotions that we don't recognize anymore because they've always been there. That's subconscious. Your body is subconscious.
Sure.
Your body is subconscious. So what's hiding in the subconscious of what you're thinking, and those things are really what's telling you what to do.
Right.
Without us consciously making it happen.
Right.
I know consciously, if I go for a walk, things are going to be better.
Right.
That's a conscious way, but my subconscious is still lacking, right? Where I haven't quite cleaned up some things, possibly to let things go or whatever. But that's a subconscious thing that I have to change. Consciously, I can make these changes. Subconsciously, I have to train that a little differently.
Let's hit on something you really just said about letting go. Do you think that a lot of the things that cause stressors in our body are things that we're just burying down in there? Do you think letting go?
100%.
Well, and it's fall.
100%.
It's time. It's fall is a time of letting go. Well, yesterday wasn't fall. Today feels like fall.
Today feels like fall.
Right.
Yeah.
But regardless, there's kind of that, beauty of the fall, of the trees, of the leaves falling, and a reminder of us to let things go. And some people, there's this mindset that some people have of just like, I'm just gonna bury it or ignore it or pretend it doesn't exist. And the fact of the matter is that those things do live inside of us.
They do.
So if we don't learn to feel them, first of all, and then let them go. We have a mutual friend that always says with love and light. And so I try to always throw that in when I'm letting things go, is like with love and light.
Yeah.
But there's something very freeing about letting things go. And again, I know people think it's baloney sometimes, but scientifically proven things live in trauma, and bad things can live inside of us if we don't let them go.
Yes.
And then they come out
And they come out some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Right. And then, like you said earlier, when you and I were talking, yes, maybe you reached down to lift something and you threw your back out. But if your body was healthy and not hanging on to things, you could have reached down and grabbed something and you wouldn't have thrown your back out. Right. So
yeah.
Simply saying, right? That's
some
simplistic thought process of it, but it's the truth.
Yeah. Getting in a car wreck, okay? Like, yes, we can understand that some things happened and we got to work some things out and, help you heal or whatever.
Sure.
But there are, we're talking the day-to-day stuff that comes up, or I've had a hip issue for 3 years and I injured it in a race, but I guarantee you it wasn't the race that did it.
Right.
It was something was off before that happened, and I'm still trying to heal that up. I'm not healing the injury from the race. I am healing some trauma that happened a long time ago,
right.
And it affected that area, right?
Right. Or you injured your hip in the race, and the trauma, bad things, however you want to say it, that's already living inside of you, sees that there's a weak spot. And it goes and it kind of attaches to the weak spot too. Like, I've heard that theory, right?
Well, inflammation, for example.
Right.
Same thing, right? Like something that's inflamed, or you've had inflammation, or you had an area that bothered you, and it flares up after a McDonald's meal. Weird, It's not. It's the fact that the inflammation goes where the inflammation already is festering.
Right.
Where the issue already is.
Right.
Like a big toe, for example. I don't know, this thing just comes and goes. Every once in a while, this thing bothers me.
Right.
Like, well, what, have you had you drink your water? How are you eating? Like all these different things to help with inflammation, period.
Right.
And it helps issues. I mean, you see that in autoimmune all the time too, right? Like, you can have flares, but you have to remember where the flare came from.
Right.
Like, the body is just so beautiful and amazing.
It really is amazing.
It tells a story. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. I have not read it. I've heard a lot of things, and I've heard it referenced a bunch, that it's like, it knows what you've been through from before you were born to where you're at right now.
Right.
So retraining its memory to let it go. I mean, I'm not...
Gotta let go.
Yeah, I gotta let it go.
You do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. and we talked about this in episode 4 when we were talking about gratitude, but there's some, we are frequency too, like we're energy, frequency, whatever. And there are some really great anti-inflammatory frequencies out. Like, again, you can take anything and throw it into YouTube or whatever, and you can find a frequency that you can play that will kind of help. But I have a friend who's doing anti-inflammatory frequencies right now and swears that it makes him feel better.
Yeah.
So
we do solfeggio, I think is how you say that.
Yeah.
Frequencies for a lot of that. And there's a lot of things out there that are very helpful. I will say you have to be careful a bit on what you're listening to, because you just don't know who makes stuff. Right?
Exactly. I agree with that. And somebody had told me, again, just to go with your gut type of thought process is like, if it sounds good, if it feels good, great. If it doesn't, turn it off.
Yeah. We've had, and even I use something in the office called Brain Tap. It's an app out there if you want it. You do pay for it. Mm-hmm. But it's a chiropractor that produced it. So I'm like, I can be in contact with him in an email and say, hey, Dr. Porter, like, what do we need to do here? So right. I like the source of the work. But he even said, if it annoys you, mm-hmm. don't listen to it, because it's not the right frequency for you right now. Even though if it's like a really good frequency, mm-hmm. it's not the one you need right now. So if something is really bothering you, or you're not liking that song right now, or whatever, so you don't need it right now.
And doesn't that go with everything?
It does.
Like, I think of that with, like, some people are super into oils. Well, oils are not for everybody.
Yeah.
Or certain oils, right? Essential oils, or herbs. People are like, oh, this herb. Well, that might be great for you right now. It might be great for me some other time, but right now it's a no for me, right? Yeah. So it's kind of goes with everything. You have to learn how to listen to your body, which can be hard, and stress can interrupt that.
It does.
That where we can't listen, mm-hmm. or we have a harder time listening.
Right. I know. And maybe you can relate, but when I am going through something bigger, like my divorce, I had to be very conscious that I didn't let my body get into a stress state so I could make really truthful decisions. Mm-hmm. Like, it was, and that took age, I think, and time to realize that, where I couldn't let anything else that wasn't going to bring me or keep me present to be around, so that I could be very present in this big decision, right? Mm-hmm. And I think when you're feeling that stress, it's not the time to make big decisions. I know. Or even though we want to,
even just
we
say
just
big
run.
Things.
You can't. You really should just shut your mouth.
Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth.
Yes.
Shut it.
Yes. And I don't know,
because that's typically when we don't. That's typically when the word vomit just comes, right? Yes. Well, word vomit to yourself in your own room, or write it down. They say write it down and set it on fire, or whatever you need to do. Oh gosh, yeah, that was probably my whole life up until I was in my 40s. Was I would just say things because in the moment, and then we're also taught, like, you just we're taught to say the things, aren't we? Or that's become a thing, right?
Yeah.
Like,
voice.
You're supposed.
Yeah. Use
yes,
your voice.
You use your voice, right? But I love the word discernment. I have a client that uses it all the time, and I just love the word because, sometimes you don't need to use your voice. Sometimes you need to be quiet and listen.
Right.
Right. To your body, to your higher power, whatever you want to say you're listening to. Mm-hmm. To listen to, understand, not to reply. Sometimes we just need to shut up and listen. We don't. When you host a podcast, you don't have to shut up. But
it turns out we need to talk. We need to talk. I don't think you'll quite get the vibe from us if we don't open our mouths.
We need to talk, but yeah, it's because I think too. You and I had talked about this earlier. Don't you know the person that really is always too stressed? They are always stressed out, and they are telling you all the time that they're stressed out. And I think we need to be careful too about, again, we talked about this last episode. You use your words carefully. If you're consistently saying that you're stressed out, guess what? Your body hears that, and it responds in kind.
Mm-hmm. It does, because it's very smart. It'll do what
you think what you're telling it to do. You're telling it that it's stressed.
Yeah.
So every time I hear people say that, I'm always like, just stop, take a deep breath. Mm-hmm. Breathing is huge.
Breathing is way bigger than I think any of us realize.
Yeah.
And that's kind of goes back to just the basics of what our body has to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's
Yeah.
like babies. What do?
Yeah.
Eat, poop, sleep.
Yeah.
Eat, poop, sleep, repeat, right?
Right.
Or whatever they say there. Very similar. Like
Right.
that does not change, but with elevated stress, or like making, perception, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
with elevated perception of stress, those things go away,
Mm-hmm.
and breathing is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So then over time, that becomes our natural way of breathing, is more of a fight or flight breathing, which is very shallow. Actually, well, it's big, but it's shallow. It's all in the chest. It's not in the belly.
Right.
So I don't know if you knew this, but when your diaphragm, it kind of looks like a jellyfish.
Mm-hmm.
When it moves up, it grazes the base of the heart, and it helps sync your heart rate. So when you're breathing appropriately and using your diaphragm, it helps your heart rate sync to like the full body flow, right? And you can regulate your heart rate that way. But what are we seeing so many people struggle with right now? First, it's high heart rate, but then it's high blood pressure, all the cardiovascular disease and conditions that are showing up, right? But it can all start with just the breathing.
Breathing.
Yeah.
I know breathing is huge.
Yep. And just think of that, like as you're breathing through your belly, it goes down and into your organs and kind of massages your digestive organs, and then comes back up and goes to heart to down. I mean, it really keeps the pace of your whole system going really well,
Right.
or really poorly,
Right.
whichever direction we're going.
Right.
Yeah. Breath work. And that's a big thing now that you see often, is people teaching you how to breathe. And there's a reason for it.
Right.
There's a reason for it. And then eventually, once you start consciously doing that over time, it becomes subconscious again.
Right.
Kind of like gratitude that we talked about last week.
Right.
Once you change, you can change your subconscious through consciously changing things.
I don't practice breath work, but it's on my list
Yeah.
of things to add in at some point. But I'm a big believer in like just stopping and taking a deep breath. I remember teaching my children that when they were young, when they'd get upset about things. It does whatever it does to you, right?
Yeah.
It gives you a moment to just stop and think and listen.
Yeah. The just breathe is real.
Yeah.
Like you see that.
Right.
Just breathe.
Just
Like,
breathe.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, but
Yeah.
no, really.
Right. Right. For real.
For real. Just breathe. Yes.
So again, we always promise to maybe give you some tools. So what have we given today? That's a perfect one. Just breathe.
Yeah. I think one is like, and we haven't quite touched there yet, but I know we're wrapping up here, but the being aware of some things that show up when you're stressed. Like, how the body's functioning. That was what we primarily talked about, but maybe, let like some things that don't typically bother you all of a sudden are eating. One, like you come home and you open the fridge and look in there for something to eat right away. Like emotional eating is a big one.
Right.
That if that's happening, most likely your system is out of alignment in one
Right.
one way or the other,
Right.
and could use a little restoration. What other ones? Spending
for
money
me,
is a big one.
spending money. Oh, sure, shopping. Yep.
Yep.
Some people have a shopping addiction, or wine, or
Yep.
drinking,
Oh, yeah.
or drinking.
Yep.
Obviously, is a huge one.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's so socially acceptable, right, to
It is
drink.
so socially
And
acceptable.
I'm not anti or pro or whatever, but I'm just saying, like, it's so, I remember, getting off work for years and people like, oh, I need a drink, or I can't wait to go home and drink my wine. And it's like, why?
Oh, I used
Why?
to say that too,
Right,
right?
right.
Like I used
Why?
to be, I was that person. But
And if
yeah,
it's as simple as because you enjoy a glass of wine, that's fine.
that's different.
Right. But, in the industry that I'm in, it's the things that I see on people's skin.
Oh yeah.
Because, the skin is the largest organ of the body, and it absolutely tells a story. It's frustrating because I can't always, obviously the story isn't always being told to me. That's very obvious, So you have to ask the questions, and I try to challenge people to be asking these questions of themselves every day, like, why is, and they're like, I don't know, I'm not doing anything different, but there usually is something in the mix, you know, whether it is, you know, like
Same
you said,
thing.
adding something into there that
Chemical.
that just pushed them over the edge. But gosh, the skin will tell a story.
Yeah.
The hair, your
Yeah.
hair, people's hair fall out, people's hair gets thinner.
Well, I
when they're
remember I
stressed.
started coming to you because I had these big cystic pimples
yeah.
all over my neck all the time.
Yeah.
For a long time, and it got
Right.
better with your help, but there was something way deeper
It's
that
always
you couldn't
internal.
take care of.
It's always internal.
And, yeah.
I tell people they don't love that answer. They
No.
want you to just fix them, and we can help.
We can help, yeah.
Obviously, you can help externally, but it's almost always something internal. And sadly, again, this is a whole nother episode, but sadly, it's a lot of it is we're not getting the proper minerals and nutrients in our food, but that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, and you're
which
so good
causes
about bringing
which
that up.
causes stressors.
Yep.
I mean, it
Yep,
causes
yep.
a lot of problems, and systemically, our bodies are just not functioning the way they are supposed to. But it's a whole nother issue,
Whole other thing. We should do one just on what is your skin telling you?
right? It's true,
Because I feel like we could have a whole bunch of stuff on that.
right?
Yeah. So anyway, I think
Yeah.
just being
you
aware.
You mentioned your heart rate earlier, like your heart, like people
Yeah.
feel like in their heart, right? That's something it's your heart's trying to tell you something. Your
Yeah.
digestive
That's a
system,
big one. Yeah.
it's a huge one.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
people's stomach hurts, or they're not going to the bathroom, or they're going to the bathroom too much, or your
Bloat
body
after every
is
meal.
always telling you something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I really think if we can learn to listen to it, a lot of things will change in our life. And it might be hard changes. I'm not saying they're easy ones, but
Right.
but
Right.
yeah, it'll kind of point you in the direction.
Do you think the world as a whole is waking up to some of these things? Or I mean, maybe not the world. I shouldn't say that.
Not about the world.
Our society.
Yes.
They're starting to
Yes
wake
and
up to
no.
some of these things, right?
Yeah. I think yes, and that they're understanding that there's something probably deeper and we need to ask more questions. I think the curiosity is there.
Yes.
But I think the excuses are really high right now too.
Yeah.
So, and I catch myself even like, oh, I had a bun or gluten, for example, is a big stressor for me. I don't handle it well. But that does not mean that gluten's the problem.
Right.
Gluten is something that my body can't handle because of something else going on deeper,
Right.
on a deeper level. So just being careful that, that these things that we have noticed send our system off doesn't necessarily mean that they're the entire problem.
Right.
It's excuses, I guess.
Right.
Of the,
And maybe not even excuses. It's knowledge.
yeah.
Because because people are told, oh, it's the gluten, or oh, it's the sugar, or which it is. It is.
It's a huge piece of it, right?
Absolutely.
It's a huge piece of it, but we don't want to tell our body that
Right.
this is a problem every time you eat it. Like, you're good at this. You've talked
Right.
about having the burger or the pizza,
Right.
or whatever. Okay, so this happened this last weekend. I was like, I wanted a burger so bad, and you know what? I got the best dang burger that I could find. I ate the heck out of it, and no stomach aches.
Right.
Did
'Cause you
not
just loved
plug me
it.
up.
And you
But
were
it's because
probably
I
grateful for it.
Changed my
And you
brain.
thanked it.
Changed my mindset around having that burger.
Right.
Now, am I going to do that every day?
No.
No,
No.
I'm not. But
No.
I had a burger, and I watched the Packers game, and I had a wonderful time.
Perfect.
And I think I think we're so hard on ourselves
We
sometimes
are.
that we just tell it to shut down.
Right.
Like, you shouldn't have done that.
Well, guilt is another emotion that's very big on the Spain scale of emotions. Like guilt is a big one, and guilt lives inside of us. And if you're feeling guilty for that burger, your digestive system isn't gonna be happy about that.
No.
Like
Right.
it's again, and I know people think some of this stuff is crazy, but it's not. It's a legitimate fact. Be grateful for the burger. Find joy in it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't taste like, I've had that where I'm like, I'm gonna order the burger, and guess what, they burnt it or whatever, and I don't eat it.
Yeah. Well, if it doesn't, if it's not
It
good.
it's not bringing me joy, I'm not enjoying it, then I don't eat, so it's like, it's really just finding that if you don't find joy in it, don't do it, and if you do, go for it.
Yeah.
And no, you can't eat a burger every day, or some people can. I don't know. I
don't-
can't.
Yeah.
I can't eat, but if I eat a piece of pizza, I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. I'm not going to feel bad about it. And I think that's just, same with working out, right? If you want to go for the run, go for the run. If you don't. And don't feel bad about it. Go for the walk. Do some
Jump
stretching. Jump on your
tram.
rebounder. Right. Do something other than what we're told we have to do.
Yes.
Just do what you want to do.
Yeah.
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 Cool.
I'm glad you ate the burger.
So freaking good. It was
Yum.
JL Beers. I added mushrooms and onions to it. It was so good.
Yummy.
So good. Well, I hope you learned something today. I know this was
I did.
This was a really fun conversation. I don't know
I
how
learned.
35 minutes just flew by. So thank you all for listening to the 010 podcast. And we hope that you learned something new today about stress, how to manage it, but more how to recognize it and understand maybe some things to do that are out of the norm to handle, to manage it, right?
Yeah.
So
what are we going to talk about? Surprise.
It is a surprise. It is a surprise. Okay, so you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. We are going to be on the radio station.
102.5.
102.5 if you haven't tuned in there to hear us. So we're kind of all over the place. And
010 podcast.
010 podcast. Here we are. Dr. Josie and Andy.
Thank you.